You would be forgiven if you thought it was June, July, August. That's what I would have assumed if I was looking at the charts. Why? Because Bitcoin is trending sideways, stock indices are trending sideways, and all major FX pairs are also trending sideways. And oil is a bit boring, and the only thing that's really moving is gold. This makes this current situation quite difficult to trade because without movement, it's difficult to make a buck. But there are some things that are moving and some things that are accelerating in pace, and that is the Australian Stock Market Index. And you might say, well, who cares? Well, if you are like me, if you're a technical trader primarily that likes to combine it with some fundamentals, then it does make sense. What's more interesting for us is the pattern and that we can get in and out without having too much trouble with slippage and high costs in general. So let's look at the Australian Stock Market Index. So back in 2023, I said a break to the upside could lift you higher per this ascending triangle pattern. We are almost at that target, and there's still a bit more of room to the upside. Now, in the short term, you can see here that we have also accelerated, and the reason for the acceleration is because earnings season is underway in Australia, and so far things have been looking really good for Australian companies. Also, we know that Australia might receive an exemption in terms of aluminum and steel imports in the US, and that is also good for Australia. So if we look at this at a short term, it's a bit of a tricky situation, but we can definitely see that we're going up. And again, we have a bit of positive news driving this. Now, this type of pattern is not necessarily one of the best ones, but effectively, if we trade on the other side of this trend line, we can go higher. Many times, by the way, it goes lower, but again, we have all this news, so maybe we can push a little bit higher. Don't necessarily have to complicate it too much. We already have this target here, and then we have another target here. So how can we make it less complicated? Well, I would go and maybe use something like a 1 hour chart, see if we can maximize this. And if you look at it from this perspective, say like 2 hours better. So now obviously we want this to go up, but we also want to get a good entry. So if one is not already long, one would look maybe for a pullback towards 8,550 or so, maybe down to 8,520. Like from these levels, realistically, we should push to the upside. And I would be happy to be bullish. Let's work with the low here. So this is the low from yesterday. So as long as you're above yesterday's low, yes, we might have a correction, but then ultimately higher. If we do this, we can have a bit of a better risk to reward ratio. We're risking about 1%. And if we do hit that old target that I mentioned, then we'll be up with about 3.36% for a risk to reward ratio of 3.35. Now, what do you need to bear in mind if one would decide to trade this? Well, you would need to have patience and maybe get yourself a new video game because it's really boring right now in the markets. If you haven't tried it before, Civilization 7 is out since yesterday. New game. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. It is a bit boring right now. And if one would take on any position, then one would look for things to move really slowly until we have a big reason to see change.